West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
You have people out there calling for recounts that are unsubstantiated based on no evidence. This was a legitimate election, and no one should question the fact that Donald Trump is the president-elect.
Hillary is on her sore loser tour, and now we have her going through recounts. You know what she needs to do? She needs to get over it. She lost. Yeah. Get out of the way and let Donald Trump be president.
Do you think the Democrats are sore losers? Yeah, I do.
The reality is they're a bunch of spoiled crybabies.
Newsflash for many of the partisan Democrats and those in the mainstream media who continue to try to delegitimize President-elect Trump's massive and historic win last month. The election's over. Hillary Clinton lost. You have to win 270 electoral votes to be elected president, and President-elect Trump actually got 306. This is all really just an effort to try to delegitimize the win.
The left's going to lie. The left's going to besmirch. They're going to go crazy. They can't accept the election results, let alone the fact that he's actually going to solve problems. They have to decide whether they're going to interfere with him finishing his business, interfere with the peaceful transfer of power to President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence, or if they're going to be a bunch of crybabies and sore losers about an election that they can't turn around.
This is America. We live in a democracy. Everybody, when they woke up in the morning, is registered to vote, could go choose. So how about respecting the majority that also live here, and their vote should count?
Brian, they're saying it's rigged, but they have absolutely no evidence that it's rigged.
I don't even think we should give him the time of day. Also, he's about to win. We know it's a matter of time. About to win Michigan officially. So that would put Donald Trump over the top with over 300 electoral votes. It was a blowout. It was a blowout. I just wonder what these Democrats are doing, trying to convince their electoral representatives not to vote the way the people want.
There are 6 of them.
Now there's these states. Let's have a recount.
We believe in free speech. We believe in accepting winners and not being sore losers.
They have no actual proof of voter fraud or any wrongdoing, and both the White House and the Wisconsin Elections Commission have both said zero evidence whatsoever. Now, what happened to the peaceful transition of power and supporting the incoming administration?
You really, seriously? You gotta wonder how they can do that. That's 4 years ago. Republicans whining, calling Democrats sore losers, calling Hillary Clinton a sore loser. By the way, credit to CNN's K-File for putting together those montages, but I don't know if you remember this, and I know in the age of Trump, we have alternative realities, and people don't even go back and look at videotape, but Hillary Clinton conceded the day after the election. She made a call to Donald Trump early that morning and conceded the day after the election. We can't even get any of those people you just saw to admit the reality that Donald Trump lost, far worse than Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden won Pennsylvania. by a much larger margin than Donald Trump 4 years ago. Won Michigan by a larger margin than Donald Trump did. Flipped Arizona by 100,000 votes. Flipped Georgia by 100,000 votes. I mean, again, they're shameless. Of course they're shameless. You can look at the clips and see what they said then and see what they're saying now. And they're attacking they were attacking Hillary Clinton then for conceding the day after the election. Here we are, what, a week and a half past the election? They all know he's lost. And they're all losers, sore losers. We had a lot of people in the 2000 recount carrying around signs that said sore loserman. Well, if the sign fits, Republicans should wear it, because this was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama actually, as Hillary was conceding and Barack Obama was saying, hey, guys, let's move along. Take a look.
We must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
So I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect.
I want to offer my congratulations to President-elect Donald Trump and wish him well for the American people.
We, of course, we're all very disappointed, not more than disappointed, hard to accept the results, but accept we do. The peaceful transfer of power is what America and our democracy is about.
I mean, really, I would say, isn't it incredible, the contrast between the horrific example, I would say, the anti-democratic example that a lot of Republicans are setting, running around lying, spreading conspiracy theories, trying to undermine, if you can believe this, trying to undermine America's confidence in a voting system.
It is Friday, the 13th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Well, the French 77s are virtually poured and waiting for your virtual imbibing pleasure. I know it's really early in the morning for some of you out there. It is for me, but it's the virtual world. So, enjoy. I should mention quickly, I've been bereft at actually putting the recipes for each daily special on the diary that I post on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And I assure folks that I will indeed get those up for each day. I'm a little behind on a lot of other things. And also caring for my mom, who I believe I mentioned obliquely, took a tumble late last week, and was it this week? It was this week. It just seems like so long ago. Ooh, that's the way Trump world is. Anyway, she took a tumble, face planted, and trying to hurt her ribs. So trying to keep her from getting pneumonia, and that's been taking a bit of time because, and also just the virus. We don't like people coming in to the house if they don't have to. So apparently it's up to me to pick up the slack. And I'm not a young guy anymore. Jeez. Anyway, there's a lot to do, but I will hopefully this weekend catch up and get those recipes at least posted on that diary somewhere. It'll probably be up above the fold. We'll see. Okay, well, what's happening in the world? Alito went to the Federalist Society, and we're going to be speaking about him in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today. But I just got to say, he he finally exposed for the world to see, because he's been a little bit secretive. We all know where Alito's allegiances lay, or is it lie? But we finally know what kind of robe he's been wearing this whole time, and it ain't a jurist robe. No, it's the pointy-hooded kind. And, he's so aggrieved. He's so aggrieved that apparently people are making fun of his religion, and he's so aggrieved. You know what, Alito? I'm a Catholic. And it's your type that killed Oscar Romero. All right? So let's be clear. The reason you think your religion is being taken to task is because you're a heretic. All right? There, I said it. And that is why we have a separation between church and state. I gotta say, Alito's letter to the Danbury Baptist probably read, "Tear down this wall between church and state." Well, you know what? He's emboldened because he has a 6-3 majority. And you know what? That 6-3 majority won't be so emboldened if they have a 9-6 disadvantage. And I think we might want to work on that, especially after Alito's speech. Especially. Looks like natural calamities are in the news again. I mean, hurricanes. We've gone through the Greek alphabet. What's next? Aramaic? We're going to have to go through the whole Aramaic alphabet, and Alito and his types will still deny the science. See, that's what's also maddening about Alito's appearance before the Federalist Society. I mean, he went up there and put out an anti-science screed. The Democrats listen to scientists. They don't listen to people who have a belief in God. You know what? You're a heretic. I don't even want to get into this whole discussion about a belief in God, whether people have it or not. But you know what, Sam? The math either adds up or it doesn't. The evidence either proves it or doesn't. I thought you were a jurist. No, he's an ideologue. I used to call it an ideologue, but it's an ideologue. Yeah, for years I always called it ideology. And then I was corrected. Ideology. Okay. I'm still not going to say often. All right? It's often. I don't call creeks cricks, but I'm not going to call often. So Alito, Thomas, and I think a few others might have an ideology at odds with what it is to have a representative democracy. They are upset that experts are determining what's good for the rest of us when it really is Sam who thinks he's the expert. And science, that's just some belief system. Okay. 9-6 disadvantage, and I'm telling you, they'd be shutting up right now. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Because we have a bit of a day. Yes, we do. We have a couple of longer offerings that we'd like to get through. So today, of course, we just started talking about Sam. Well, he's always wanted America to be that shiny anti-science Christo-fascist cathedral on the hill. That one. Prosecutors urged a New York judge to reject moving the border wall case to Colorado in a gambit to separate from co-defendant Steve Bannon. And attorney James McElroy made sure white supremacist Tom Metzger, who died last week at age 82, made payments on a judgment for his role in the Portland, Oregon killing of Mulugeta Seraw in 1988. And actually, the story gets even more involved, and it might even bring a tear to your eye. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the United Nations and other organizations are applauding Mexico's decision to prohibit holding migrant children in immigration detention centers. And that means they're not going to hold their parents either. Good for them. And 7 peacekeepers, including 5 Americans, were killed in a Sinai helicopter crash you won't hear anything from Trump about. Not one word. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we always thank Kelly for that. And she does a lot more too, and there's a lot to do. Thank you. If you would then take a gander, and of course we do talk like that around here. It gets you banned on Facebook if you're not careful. Boy, those people don't know English. I wonder why. We know why. If you would now take a gander to the leftish of the chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will find our Patreon page, and that's there because we need to ask for money. I am sorry, but, we don't get Soros funds, even though they keep telling us we do. I'd like to get the interest at least, but no, that Soros money is not coming. So we are left with pulling it out of our own wallets and, well, you helping us along the way. And we've been doing this for almost 10 years now of 24/7, 365 continuous resistance radio. That's right. We broadcast around the clock every day. And it's like a vocation, though I like to consider it a civic duty. We are fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended, and we're able to do so because of your generosity over these many years, and to be honest, we need more of you. In a democracy, you can't put the onus on just a few. Everybody needs to chip in and help out. That's how it works. And anyway, with those funds, we're able to, pay our bills, and that gets us to fly under the radar. And also, just the way it works, they don't make things to last anymore. When I was a kid, we fought against planned obsolescence, and I thought we had almost won. And it turned out all we did is we won a battle, but we didn't win the war. Darn it. So things, fall apart a lot quicker than they should. Though, we have been using these workhorses of computers here for actually over 4 years now. And they're about ready to be put out to pasture. They need to slow down, I got to tell you. And the generosity of a few of you out there has allowed me to actually identify the PC I need to replace and put a big dent in getting this MacBook replaced because it has battery expansion. And it's no longer a laptop. It's a desktop, and we need a laptop because laptops have batteries that allow them to run when the power goes out. Maybe not totally broadcast until the ISP puts out their signal, so that we are hardwired into, by the way. But, so we are in the process of doing that, especially since the PC is still running on Windows 7. Who does that? And we need to get that newish computer picked up and worked out so we can put it right in place and hopefully have a seamless transition. Okay, we'll see how that works out. Anyway, thank you for your generosity. We need more of you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple because Tom made it simple. And Tom does a lot more than just, handle the Twitter account. But we thank Tom for that and so much more. And, of course, you can find us at Netroots Radio on Twitter. That's why it's simple. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you might as well, because that's where I post the show notes and links diary first. on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I post that show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime and get it out on other social media, not so much Facebook now because Zuckerberg. I don't know about that Zuckerberg. He lets Bannon stay on after Bannon said he wants to decapitate Fauci, but I got kicked off for 30 days for making a sarcastic comment about what a white nationalist Donald Trump is. And I never even used the F word. They called it hate speech. So I don't know. White nationalist, that's hate speech. Threatening to decapitate the leading virologist in the world. Well, that's just Steve being Steve, and nothing there. All right, so F you, Facebook. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. All right, let's get into this article about Alito. God. We've been talking about Alito and his capabilities for a long time. But it's, I don't know if it's refreshing. It's bracing to have him actually come out and say it. But anyway, this offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it's Blue Moon Spirits Fridays because it is Friday the 13th, so we have to steel ourselves. Jessica Gresco of the Associated Press brings us this offering. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito said yesterday, Thursday, sounded an alarm about restrictions imposed because of the coronavirus pandemic, saying they shouldn't become a recurring feature after the pandemic has passed. Oh, please. This guy has no historical perspective, does he? The last time the United States lied about a pandemic was the 1918 and 19 pandemic. Some people erroneously calling it the Spanish flu. That's just where they discovered it after it had been raging for quite a while. They were finally able to pin it down. And then it got, and they pinned it down in Spain. So it suddenly became the Spanish flu, which I got to say, back in the day, was a racial buzzword. Okay? But that was the last time they lied about it. Do you remember anybody being forced to wear masks and social distance in World War II? How about in all those walk-in theaters in the 30s? Movie palaces, packed to the gills. Alito, he's a little whiner. The pandemic has resulted in previously unimaginable restrictions on individual liberty, Alito said in an address to the Conservative Federalist Society, which is holding its annual convention virtually because of the pandemic. Oh, too bad. Alito noted that he was not diminishing the severity of the virus. I just want to whine about it. Why do I have to stay in? Why do I washed my hands. I washed my face. I ate my broccoli. Why can't I go out and play? I want to play. He said it is an indisputable statement of fact that we have never before seen restrictions as severe, extensive, and prolonged as those experienced for most of 2020. Well, we haven't seen, the fascists take over the United States, and in the process, a pandemic came out, and this fascist can't make the vaccines run on time. Please. Whatever one may think about the COVID restrictions, we surely don't want them to become a recurring feature after the pandemic is passed, said Alito, who was nominated to the court by Bush, the W. Alito was particularly critical of two cases earlier this year, where the court sided with states that, citing the coronavirus pandemic, imposed restrictions on the size of religious gatherings. Oh, no. In both cases, the court divided 5-4 in allowing those restrictions to continue, with Chief Justice John Roberts siding with the court's liberals. In May, the High Court rejected an emergency appeal by a California church challenging attendance limits at worship services. The justices turned away a similar challenge by a Nevada church in July. Alito said in both cases, the restrictions had blatantly discriminated against houses of worship, and he warned that religious liberty is in danger of becoming a second-class right. Oh, stop your whining. Now, I gotta understand how this cosmology works in the Alito brain. Now, he calls himself a Catholic. So, if God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, why the hell do we need to stand next to somebody who might be sick or we might be sick and get them infected so we can commune with God? If God is everywhere, why do we need to confine ourselves in some church to do that? You know why? Because there is a collection plate. That's why. Well, Sam, how about tithing with some digital currency? You could do that. Larry Neumeister of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Prosecutors said yesterday, Thursday, that they opposed a Colorado man's request to move his trial out of New York, a legal maneuver that would separate him from a high-profile co-defendant, one Steve Bannon. Prosecutors mashed every one of Timothy Shea's arguments to move the trial with a reason why it should remain in New York. The prosecutors wrote in a submission in Manhattan federal court that moving Shea's trial would put a costly burden on the government and the courts and inconvenience witnesses that included investors he ripped off. Shea has pleaded not guilty, as have his 3 co-defendants, including Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, remember? He was arrested on a Chinese mogul's yacht. Interesting. The men were charged with lying to investors to unlawfully raise over $25 million for the We Build the Wall campaign, a quest to help fund a wall along the nation's southern border that was supposed to be paid for by Mexico. With a trial scheduled for next May, Shea's lawyers asked a judge last week to move his trial to Colorado. They argued that Shea would have a harder time fighting the charges in a city he hasn't visited since attending a New York Yankees game as a child. They said a trial would also disrupt his fledgling business-winning energy, which he operates from his hometown of Castle Rock, Colorado. The energy drink company's cans feature a cartoon superhero image of Trump and claim to contain 12 ounces of liberal tears. Prosecutors said they do not plan to call any witnesses located in Colorado, so a trial there would be a burden for their witnesses, which include agents and analysts involved in the investigation, along with victims from the New York area. They said moving the trial would also force the government to conduct 2 separate costly trials, one for Shea in Colorado and another for his co-defendants in New York, which includes one Steve Bannon. Prosecutors also rejected Shea's arguments, citing the coronavirus and the fear witnesses who support him might have in traveling to New York during a pandemic. While the pandemic is a rapidly evolving situation, New York currently has some of the lowest COVID-19 positivity rates in the country, they wrote. Elliot Spaggett of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The California lawyer who for years made sure white supremacist Tom Metzger made payments on a judgment for his role in the killing of an Ethiopian man studying in the U.S. took no money for himself from the case, but ended up with something priceless, a son. Attorney James McElroy became close with the victim's family and eventually adopted the man's son, who was 7 at the time of the killing, and grew up to be an airline pilot. McElroy calls the bond with his son the best fee that I ever got out of a pro bono case. McElroy has been largely silent about the adoption, but he feels more comfortable speaking publicly since Metzger, aged 82, died last week in Hemet, California, from complications of Parkinson's disease. McElroy, aged 69, worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center to get a $12.5 million award against Metzger, a one-time leader of the KKK, who was linked to the 1988 murder of Mulugeta Seraw, a 28-year-old college student who was clubbed over the head with a baseball bat in Portland, Oregon. 3 members of the skinhead group East Side White Pride were convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. One of the men communicated with Metzger before the attack. The judgment against Metzger came after a 1990 trial during which a recording was played of Metzger praising the killers for performing what he called their civic duty. Metzger was living in San Diego County, where McElroy, a civil rights lawyer, lived, so McElroy volunteered to collect from Metzger over the next 20 years and deliver the money to the slain man's family. He flew to Ethiopia to meet Seraw's family and took a liking to the man's son. The mother worked for a bus company, earning the equivalent of about $20 a month. McElroy asked permission to bring the boy to San Diego for a summer. I already had a son, and they just clicked, McElroy said. They learned how to surf and be typical Southern California kids. He got the boy into a private school in Ethiopia. Then he asked to adopt the boy, and the mother agreed, grateful for the opportunities her son would have in the United States. The boy graduated from Torrey Pines High School in San Diego and the University of California, Santa Barbara. Now in his mid-30s, he is married and is a pilot for a major commercial airline. His son actually pursued the dream of his father by getting a U.S. education, McElroy said. He was actually able to do it out of this great and horrible tragedy. Now, McElroy believes Metzger died not knowing about the relationship. The Associated Press is not identifying his adopted son at the request of McElroy, who says he guards his privacy. Seraw's murder forced Portland, Oregon to reckon with white supremacy. It also brought McElroy face-to-face with Metzger, who lived nearby in Fallbrook and was near the height of his notoriety. Now, Fallbrook's down in San Diego County, of course. Metzger ran for Congress from northern San Diego County in the early 1980s, winning the Democratic primary, but he lost by a landslide in the general election after Democrats and Republicans united against him. He became a prominent figure on media during those years, appearing on TV talk shows, organizing white supremacist demonstrations and cross-burnings, and promising a white civil war that would result in blood in the streets. Metzger could not afford the damages against him, but he paid several $100,000, and McElroy achieved his objective: to deprive Metzger and his organization, the White Aryan Resistance, of money to spread influence. McElroy took special satisfaction selling Metzger's Fallbrook home to a Latino family as partial payment. Poetic justice. Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
EdwardsRadio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Make Glorious Review benefit moviegoers. Though Sacha Baron Cohen had announced the retirement of the Borat character in 2007 after the first movie, rumors began surfacing after Cohen was spotted in the disguise last year and observed filming something last spring. Given that and, say, one or two comedic opportunities being present, Amazon Studios announced the new Borat subsequent movie film in September. As you might recall, the nation of Kazakhstan was less than thrilled about its portrayal in the first Borat, and that fact serves to launch this one as the Kazakh journalist is released from prison for humiliating the country for a mission to the U.S. to present a gift to Donald Trump and restore the country's honor. Arriving in Texas, the mission mutates from giving Trump a monkey to presenting Mike Pence with his daughter Tutar, played by the Bulgarian actress Maria Bakalova in her breakout English language role. Her character in many ways reprises that of the wonderful and hairy Asimov in the first movie. Hijinks ensue as the pair, separately or together, experience America, including a coming-out party for Tutar, a visit to the CPAC convention, a synagogue full of Holocaust survivors, a state fair where Cohen is a country singer, and a rural cabin full of animal heads and QAnon folks. Then, of course, there's the Rudy Giuliani scene, and no spoilers here, but the pandemic is explained too. Humor as political commentary is about as old as humor itself, or political commentary itself, and Borat, subsequent movie film, is as good as it gets. And while we all wish Cohen the best in the future, as Trump moves into our rear view, we should hope the future will present a less target-rich environment. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Wade Gibbs. Public health experts shake their heads at the chaotic political divisions and inconsistent policies that have undermined attempts to control the spread of COVID-19 through much of the world. But a new study by mathematicians in Germany and the UK has applied the tools of chaos theory to show that divisions of a constructive kind could actually bring the pandemic under control much more effectively. The research was done at the University of Oxford, Göttingen University, and the Max Planck Institute for Dynamics and Self-Organization. The group built a mathematical model of coronavirus transmission that accounts for the inherently random ways that the number of infections fluctuates over time. They noticed that case counts within small populations sometimes drop all the way to zero, as long as people are wearing masks, social distancing, and taking the other standard precautions. Those spontaneous extinctions of the disease made them wonder, if the small towns or counties did more to isolate themselves from neighboring communities, would that sometimes extinguish COVID-19 enough that they could lift restrictions and resume more of normal life for longer periods until the disease popped up again? A rigorous mathematical analysis showed that, indeed, this kind of divide-and-conquer strategy can work, at least in theory. They published that result in the journal Chaos. Then, in a follow-on study published in a preprint, which has yet to be peer-reviewed, the group ran simulations using county-level data from Germany, England, Italy, New York State, and Florida. For each place, they compared two scenarios. In the first, leaders imposed statewide or nationwide restrictions, like those that Western European countries have just put back into effect. In the second scenario, restrictions on movement kick in whenever infection rates rise above a threshold, but the restrictions are applied county by county, or even neighborhood by neighborhood within large cities, so that the population is effectively subdivided into groups no bigger than 200,000 people. For example, under this alternative strategy, a big outbreak could force the Upper West Side of Manhattan to restrict non-essential movements for several weeks. But in other neighborhoods on the island, schools, offices, and restaurants could remain open, so long as case counts stayed low. The researchers found that even when they allowed for modest intermingling among communities, this approach of local control could cut by about 80% the number of days that most people would have to spend living under tough restrictions. Their models predict that these benefits of local control might take a few months to become obvious, but they also suggest that a subdivision strategy could save many, many lives over the long run. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Wade Gibbs.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1927. That was the day that the Holland Tunnel, connecting New York City and New Jersey, opened for traffic. Before the tunnel, the only way to cross the Hudson River from the city to New Jersey was by ferry. City officials decided to build a tunnel to alleviate congestion. But they had a problem. All those cars driving underground would cause a potentially deadly buildup of carbon monoxide. There had to be a way to ventilate the tunnel. Engineer Clifford Holland came up with the solution. Big fans located at each end of the tunnel could draw fresh air into the passage. The giant fans were nearly as tall as a 10-story building. In honor of his engineering work, the tunnel was named after Holland. But he did not live to see the completion of his vision. The tunnel also owes its existence to unionized labor. The workers who performed the backbreaking work of digging New York's vehicle and subway tunnels called themselves the Sandhogs. In a 1983 book about the union, written by Paul Delaney, a worker recounted his memories of the Holland Project, saying, quote, "The turnover in workers was unbelievable. Men would work an hour or maybe a shift, and they'd never be seen on the job again. Even the strongest men were tired after 15 or 20 minutes in the air. And there was always the worry about being fired. If a man went for more than 2 sips of water during a shift, he was told to collect his wages and go home." 14 workers died on the project. More than 1 billion cars have made the trip under the Hudson River since it first opened. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Well, it may have been lacking in suspense, as both Fox, Not News, and Decision Desk HQ made this call on election night. But shortly after 11 p.m. Eastern, Thursday night, NBC and CNN both projected that Joe Biden will win the state of Arizona.
Joe Biden will win Arizona. He is the winner of 11 electoral votes in Arizona. Joe Biden wins the state of Arizona, a major projection right now by CNN. Look at the votes, a little over 11,000 margin, 49.4 to 49.1. Joe Biden again has won the state of Arizona.
So with Biden's victory in Arizona, with a lead of 11,434 votes, 49.41% to 49.07%. That leaves 2 states still to be called. In Georgia, Joe Biden is ahead by 14,116 votes. That's 49.52% to 49.24%. So, on Friday morning at 9 a.m., the hand recount audit begins. That's expected to go until Wednesday. In North Carolina, Donald Trump is ahead 71,399 votes. That's 49.91% to 48.62%. So it's clear to virtually everyone that Joe Biden won and is our president-elect. But Donald Trump doesn't know how to concede or lose gracefully, so he's raging. In this case, against CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency that Trump himself established in November of 2018. Well, On Thursday night, CISA contradicted Trump's voter fraud conspiracies, saying unequivocally there is no evidence of any voting system being compromised in the 2020 election. Their statement reads in part, quote, the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. Right now, across the country, election officials are reviewing and double-checking the entire election process prior to finalizing the result. When states have close elections, many will recount ballots. All of the states with close results in the 2020 presidential race have paper records of each vote, allowing the ability to go back and count each ballot if necessary. This is an added benefit for security and resilience. This process allows for the identification and correction of any mistakes or errors. There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised, end quote. Well, that's pretty definitive. And let me add, a silver lining to this COVID pandemic is that we voted on paper ballots. But back to the subject at hand. In response, or more likely retaliation, more firings. Yeah, this time, Valerie Boyd, the top official for international affairs at the Department of Homeland Security, and Brian Ware, a senior policy aide at CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, were both shown the door. And the warning flag is up around Cybersecurity Chief Christopher Krebs, who everyone is worried could be fired next. But all the news is not bad. Let's look at some of the good news that came from this election. Americans showed up to vote big time, breaking all voter turnout state and national records, and they're not even done counting yet. So far, 63.9% of Americans eligible to vote cast a ballot in the 2020 election. That's the highest percentage since 1908, when it was a record 65.7% turnout. On the state level, turnout in all but 8 is projected to exceed 40-year records, with Minnesota and Wisconsin coming in at close to 80% turnout. Overall, total 2020 turnout is projected to rise to 66.5% once all the votes are tallied. That would be the highest since 1900, when there was a 73.7% turnout among eligible voters. But keep in mind that there was a much smaller pool of eligible voters back in 1900 and 1908, as women, Asian Americans, and some Native Americans could not vote, and other non-white Americans were discouraged from voting through Jim Crow laws and other intimidation tactics. Well, let's come back to 2020 now. It's been well over a week since Election Day, and almost as long since now lame duck Donald has spoken publicly. He is rage tweeting prolifically, but is ignoring the public duties of the presidency. The Washington Post noting, quote, on Thursday, 6 American service members were killed in a helicopter crash during a peacekeeping mission in Egypt. Tropical storm Eta made landfall in North Florida, contributing to severe flooding. The number of Americans infected with the novel coronavirus continued at a record-setting pace, sending the stock market tumbling. At the White House, President Trump spent the day, as he has most others this week, sequestered from public view, tweeting grievances, falsehoods, and misinformation about the election results and about Fox News' coverage of him. Neither he nor his aides briefed reporters on the news of the day or reacted to Democratic leaders who've been accusing Republicans of imperiling the pandemic response by refusing to accept reality over the election results. So Trump may be silent, but the last president is speaking out. Barack Obama's got a new book on the way. A Promised Land hits shelves on Tuesday, and a new 60 Minutes interview will air Sunday night. From this preview, we see that Obama is not shy about calling out the GOP for going along with Trump's madness.
What are these false claims of widespread election fraud doing to our country right now?
They appear to be motivated in part because the president doesn't like to lose and never admits loss. I'm more troubled by the fact that other Republican officials who clearly know better are going along with this, are humoring him in this fashion. It is one more step in delegitimizing not just the incoming Biden administration, but democracy generally. And that's a dangerous path.
And if 2018 was the year of the woman, 2020 is shaping up to be the year of the women of color, as at least 50 women of color will serve in the next Congress, a whopping 4 of them Republicans. The other big story of the day, also being ignored by Trump and his administration, is, of course, COVID-19. U.S. public health officials reported 164,405 new cases on Thursday, obliterating the previous single-day record set on Wednesday. It was also the first day since the pandemic began where the country has seen more than 150,000 new infections. It was the 8th straight day with more than 100,000 new cases. And hospitalizations for COVID-19 rose to 67,096 patients, also a record, all this according to the COVID Tracking Project. Hospitalizations have doubled over the last 5 weeks, and deaths, which tend to rise shortly after increases in new cases, are already averaging more than 1,000 a day. In a number of states, governments are tightening restrictions on public and private gatherings to curb the spread of the virus, including the city of Chicago, where a new 30-day stay-at-home order begins Friday morning. And as expected, new COVID-19 cases with ties to Donald Trump's orbit continue to climb. On Thursday, 3 more came to light. Corey Lewandowski, obviously an advisor to Trump, Jeff Miller, a top advisor to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and Richard Walters, the chief of staff at the RNC, all tested positive. And go figure, Lewandowski and Miller were both at the election night celebration at the White House. In the 10 days since the event, a few individuals close to the president have tested positive, including White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit with lots of rain. We'll get to that in just a moment. Looks like we're going to have rain all day today, and with winds out of the west-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Oh, my. And we are expecting to get about 1/4 of an inch of rain today and tonight. And lows should be in the upper 30s to low 40s, and winds will be light and variable tonight. Tomorrow, we're expecting highs in the upper 40s with cloudy with an occasional shower, though tomorrow we're expecting by the end of the day to have at least 1/2 inch falling. So that's quite a bit. And the forecast shows rain every day for the next 7 days. We'll see how that goes. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon went from 2,481 yesterday to 2,605 today. The largest spike in Oregon, and that's just our county. The whole state of Oregon had the largest one-day spike since the coronavirus pandemic started. Deceased remain at 8, though we know that's a gross undercount. Pollen right here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 35 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.66 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%, and it's raining pretty hard right now. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 53 and partly cloudy. Paris is 60 and sunny. Rome is 65 and fair. Kyiv is 39 and cloudy. Kabul is 48 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 68 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 54 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 65 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 49 and mostly cloudy with a heavy rain advisory with flooding. And New York, New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Christopher Sherman of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The UN and other organizations are applauding changes to Mexico's immigration law that would prohibit holding migrant children in immigration detention centers. International and domestic groups have pressured Mexico for years to stop holding children in detention centers with their parents. Under the reforms, children would also have their legal status provisionally recognized to avoid the risk of immediate deportation before having the opportunity to explore possibilities of seeking protective status.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Dan Williams of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A helicopter with the U.S.-led multinational force and observers, otherwise known as the MFO, in the Egyptian Sinai crashed yesterday Thursday near the resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh, killing 7 members of the peacekeeper force, the MFO said. Those killed were 5 Americans, a French national, and a Czech national, all of them military service members. It added that 1 American MFO survived and was medically evacuated. An earlier statement had said that 8 peacekeepers were killed, including 6 Americans. An official briefed on the incident, who could not be identified by name or nationality, told Reuters it was an accident caused by mechanical failure. And as we are reporting right at this moment, Donald Trump has not said one word of a condolence for this tragedy. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and also for the week. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. Maybe Donald Trump will have conceded by then. There's going to be a big riot in D.C. with his militias on Saturday, so we'll see how that turns out. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. We'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.